Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we're going to conclude the January 2021 POB paper 2. So yes, this is the last question for the January 2021 POB paper 2. So we're at question 5. And so we're going to finish this one with a bang. So before we do that, before we jump into it, let me just ask you a favor. Like the video, hit the like button, the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel because I realize a lot of y'all are not subscribed, and also hit the bell so you know when we jump on a new past paper. Alright, so do those things for me. Like the video, share it, hit the bell, etc, etc. Alright, let's just jump into number 5 now. State 2 indicators of a country's standard of living and state 2 indicators of a country's quality of life. So they're just asking you to state. You don't have to outline or explain anything, just state. And so in the textbooks, you have them well listed right there. So you have standard of living is a measure of wealth as well as the basic needs and material comfort that a citizen has the ability to buy and to be able to enjoy. So you have a whole lot of them here. You have disposable income, that's one. So that's disposable income, that's one. You have the national ownership of capital equipment, a measure of the total capital stock, that's the next one. Then you have access to modern technology, how much you can afford, how much fancy things you can afford. Then you have level of investment in research and technology. And so those are some indicators of your standard of living. So again, the level of consumption of goods and services, the average disposable income of the population, or the GDP per capita, or the national income, GNI per capita, the level of national ownership of equipment, and then the access to modern technology. Then there's also the level of investment in research and technology. And so they're only asking us to state, so therefore you just state and you get your 2 marks. And then we jump in now to state 2 indicators of a country's quality of life. And so we have a few here. The extent of security enjoyed, so the level of crime, that can measure your quality of life. The availability of health, educational, and recreational facilities. So I don't know if you want to break these apart. You can say availability of health facilities, or educational facilities, or recreational facilities. You can pull them out, make the one more than one. Then you have the diet and nutrition of the people in the country. And then you have the life expectancy of the people in the country. So here they say life expectancy is the average age that a person can expect to live in a given society. Life expectancy in Haiti is 61 years. In contrast, life expectancy in Barbados is 75.6 and roughly 75 in St. Nevis. And so those are indicators. Then you have, of course, the rate of infant mortality. The infant mortality rate, that's the next indicator of the quality of life. If it's low, that's a good thing. Then you have the access to public utilities such as electricity, potable water, and technology. So access to these things in a country can help to determine the quality of life. Could you imagine not having access to clean water? No, that's a problem. Or electricity, that's a problem. So that would reduce the quality of life. And so those are indicators of a country's quality of life. And so you have some more in this other textbook right here. We have some of the same thing. Access to high quality healthcare. Like I said, you could break them out. Availability of educational facilities, access to recreational facilities, extent of security or the level of crime. You have diet and nutrition, life expectancy, infant mortality rate, access to electricity, access to water, those kind of things. So those are indicators of the quality of life. So you have 2 marks there, 2 marks here, 4 marks total. Then the next question asks, define each of the following terms: GDP and GNP. GDP and GNP, and of course they are different. And so gross domestic product is the monetary value of all goods produced within the borders of a country, right? So let's look at it from the textbook's point of view. And so we have gross domestic product is a measure of the total value of goods produced in an economy in a particular period, such as a year. So gross domestic product is a measure of the total value, monetary value of goods produced in an economy in a particular period, such as a year. And we're talking about monetary value. Gross domestic product, right here again, you have the definition here in the next textbook, is the value of all final goods and services produced by every industry within a country each year. And so you'll see the difference between GDP and GNP. So that's GDP. So that's the monetary value of goods produced within a country for a given time period, usually 1 year. GDP. And then now you would have the GNP, which is gross national product. Right? So national should give an indicator now. So gross national product includes the incomes of all citizens and companies of a country, no matter where in the world they have earned them. This is also known as the gross national income. So the values of GNP and GDP can be very different in smaller developing countries. So what we're saying, so we're really saying GDP versus GNP is, right? GNP refers to the total value of goods produced by resources a particular country in a particular period, regardless of whether the goods were produced locally or abroad. So here we say, for GNP, once it is produced by factors of production owned by a citizen of a country, it is counted towards its GNP because it grows national product, and national own those resources, then they're going to count it towards your national product, your gross national product. But GDP, on the other hand, is a measure of the total value of goods produced in an economy within the borders of a country, within the borders of an economy. It doesn't matter who owns the factor of production. It doesn't matter who owns the resources. Once production was done within the border of a country, then it is calculated in the GDP. But GNP is whether they were produced in the borders or outside of the borders of a country. Once they were produced using factors of production owned by a citizen of that country, it goes towards their GNP. That's what the country he was asking, just to define them. And so that's how we define both of them, GDP versus GNP. All right, that's 4 marks. Next question, outline 3 ways in which a country could benefit from international trade. Of course, that one kind of straightforward. And so if you go to our textbook, we see them outline a few advantages of international trade. And so one say, to give local businesses the opportunity to expand into new markets and therefore produce and sell at higher volumes to boost profits. And so you realize that they're saying here is that because you're engaging in international trade, your local industries have access to a wider market, so they can actually trade beyond the borders. And that is good because that can help to increase production level, increase economies of scale, and also lead to profits. You can have higher profits for increased production, increased sales, because you have new markets to tap into overseas. So that's one advantage, one benefit. Next one, it increases competition in the domestic market. Why? How? Foreign products force local producers to improve quality, productive ability, and prices. So they're saying that because if local producers want to compete, they have to up the game, they have to up the ante, they have to up the standards. And so because of the fact that people have options outside of the country, it forces the local ones to become more competitive by, producing better quality and give good pricing for your product, so you can be competitive. And so that's one thing that international trade allows, because you can go outside, local people got to step up the game. Then you have selling products into markets in other countries reduces the risk to the business. So what they're saying is that instead of relying on one market only, let's say one country only, you have more markets to sell to. And as such, that reduces the overall risk. Because what if your local country stop demanding your products? What if they stop asking for your product? Then you have a problem. You have nowhere else to go. But if there comes a point where the local market stop demanding your product, you can always go outside and still maintain some of your sales. And then let's say here, products not made locally can be imported either because of climate or lack of technological capability. And in the Caribbean, we see this all the time. A lot of fruits and vegetables are imported because we just cannot grow them. We just don't have the climate to grow them. A lot of other things are done, are imported, because we don't have the widespread ability to do certain refining and things like that, like petrochemicals and things like that, and other technologies that we just cannot do. In the Caribbean, we just can't do them. And so therefore, we have no choice but to import them. But what if we were not engaged in international trade? Then you would have no access to these other types of resources that we cannot grow homegrown. And then countries can access the resources they need for a wider range of industrial sector to provide employment and reduce the risk to the economy due to changing market conditions. And so because you're engaged in international trade, you can have access to different resources, a wider range of resources. And as such, you can build industries out of these things. And when you build industries out of these different things, you can encourage a reduction in unemployment and hire more persons. So those are some benefits of engaging in international trade. And that's why they ask to outline 3 ways in which a country could benefit from international trade. Then we have the last one we have the last question right here. D. Explain one negative effect of each of the following factors on the economy of a developing country. One negative effect. So you have migration and you have unemployment. So one negative effect of migration, one negative effect of unemployment. And so we know migration, brain drain and all. So we can already know what some of the negative effects are on the economy. And if we jump to our textbook, we have some negative impacts of migration on the developing country. That's why the question they ask for negative effect. And so we have a few outlined here. And so we have poor housing conditions may mean they settle for poorer quality of housing if rent and acquisition of property are more expensive in that country. But we're going to focus on the last 2 here. They said choose one. So we're going to focus on these last 2. Loss of skilled and educated workers. You know about the brain drain, where skilled and educated workers leave the developing country and go overseas. And so typically, locally at a cost to the local country. So they're saying is that you lose that brain, you lose those skilled workers that are gonna put you back in terms of developing. That's gonna hamper your development as a country, because all of a sudden everybody getting educated and leaving. So there's no one there with new ideas, new technology, new thinking to help to develop your company your country further. And so that's a negative impact right there. You're losing skilled persons, you're losing educated persons, and as such, you're not going to be able to develop your country fully because you still have the same old mindset, old thinking within the country. So migration can take that positive person out and send them over, leaving a negative impact, which is the lack of skilled and educated persons. Then you have labor shortages. When the skilled and educated individuals leave the country. So not only are you going to cause the country to not develop properly because of the lack of skilled and educated workers, but it's going to be labor shortage. So you're going to affect your employment numbers. Another negative impact or effect of migration would be the labor shortages when the skilled, educated individuals leave the country. And so if you leave the country, then all of a sudden there are jobs there that no one can fill, and so you have a shortage of labor. And so this can somewhat affect your employment numbers, your unemployment numbers, because one of the types of unemployment is what you call frictional, or what you call structural unemployment, where the skills are not really fitting the slots that are available. The skills are not fitting the jobs that are out there. So you're going to have a labor shortage for sure. Because imagine you want nurses and all the nurses or doctors migrating. You have problems. You have a shortage of nurses. You have a shortage of doctors. You have a shortage of teachers. So you have a shortage of certain specific type of labor. And so that's a problem for any country that persons are leaving or fleeing. You're going to have a shortage of different skill sets, a shortage of different professional persons, and so that's a problem for that country. And so we now look at the negative effects of unemployment. Now off the bat, you could think of one right there. Crime, right? You're not working anywhere, you're getting no monies, no income. Of course, that means that crime will be on the rise. And so that would affect your overall quality of life, because you can't go nowhere because of crime, and you feel afraid, you feel unsecured, and so crime is one of the easiest ones to figure out as it relates to unemployment. Unemployment causes crime, but that's not the only thing. It also causes the loss of output within a country, meaning that the GDP might drop, might have negative growth, economic growth, and so that would affect the overall development of the country, because productivity would drop, output would drop, because unemployment is just low. Unemployment is an issue. It might be high, and so that means nobody's working, nobody's producing. Then, of course, poverty. Because you're not working, you have no money, you have no income, and if you have no income, you can afford to buy certain things such as nutritious meals, and so you can end up below the poverty line, both absolute poverty, relative poverty. And so it can cause poverty to creep into an economy or a country when the unemployment rate is high. And then, of course, we have welfare payments. So what would this do? Now, welfare payments would be somewhat of a burden or stress on the economy. They'll have to pay persons who are unemployed, and where's that money coming from? Because if you're not employed, that means you're not putting into social security or anything like that, but you're receiving your welfare payments, your welfare checks, and that would put a drain on the country, on the government, and that can also lead to increase in national debt. So all these are effects that unemployment would have, negative effects. You have, of course, loss of income. You have the psychological cost to consider, stress, unhappiness within the country, so the country becomes unhappy. And of course, one of the big things would be crime, poverty, and welfare payments, as we just explained. And as simple as that, 6 marks right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And that's it. January 2021 is over, done, dusted. January 2021, paper 2, right? So we're going to jump into a next year. Next time we look at the POB paper, would be another year. We have done a couple of years already on this channel, so you can look at those, but we're going to try to bolster this with some more years. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.